record thing now. So that's that. So first of all, welcome and thank you very much for coming along and bearing with us on this journey. I have to say, since Pragmatic Tracker started, we went live in 2011, and we went from a version 1 to a version 2 back in maybe 2014. We've gone now from version 2 to version 3. And this is a very, very significant hike up for the product in all sorts of ways. Of course, what happens with that is no matter how much you test it, no matter how many permutations and send it out to people and all the rest of it, there are teething problems. So if you can bear with us, please give me, send me any difficulties you're having or whatever like that, and I'll address them all. I think a lot of the things I'm going to explain now will solve a lot of these issues that people might notice. So really the purpose of tonight is, it's not like the last time I was talking about all the new features and stuff like that. That information is there. If you were attending those sessions, you'll have had the link to the video about that. It's there, it's available. I'm not so much interested in focusing on that tonight, although if we've time we can get to some of those things. And what I really want to do is to make sure the ABCs are working, like getting logged in, and making sure your own user profile is correctly set, and then explaining a couple of new things that are quite important and easy to get confused about in setting up a new client, so you get things all right. So I hope that makes some sort of sense. So what I'm going to do, without any further ado, what I'll do with the chat, now there's a way of unpinning this, I think. Yeah, you know, there's a chat on the Zoom thing. If I'm chatting away, if I'm talking away here, and you think, oh, I want to make sure I ask him about such and such, if you just type it into the chat, and then I'll see them coming up, and I can make sure I address them, rather than a constant stop-start. So, and I see most of you are muted yourself, which is grand. It makes it easier. And then obviously just unmute yourself when if I see your name and I say, oh, let me talk about that, etc. So we'll see how it goes. Hopefully all will be well. Okay, so let me go to where do I need to be? I need to be on this one. So that's PTSD resolution. Let me go here and log out. Okay. And then go here and there and there and there. Okay. Let's just get that a bit bigger. Right. So you can all see the HGI login screen, I hope, here. Right. Now I have a username of myself as a practitioner, and I haven't yet attempted to log in with it. So I am like one of you guys today logging into this. So let's see what happens to me when I have a go at this. So it should be that. So here I go. Now I get a validation code. So this is the first thing. It's two-factor authentication now. Now you'll have just heard an email landing, and you mightn't have heard it, but I just heard it. And basically, Pragmatic Tracker will have sent me an email. There it is with my login code, right? So that's my login code, 259027. Oops. 259027. And login. And all's gone well. So that's what I hope is going to happen the vast majority of people, right? So the point about two-factor authentication is it's all part of GDPR, it's industry standard. It's like you have with banking and all these secure sites. But the point about it is it's only the first time in the day that you log in from a particular IP address. So if I now went to a different computer in this house and I went to the same site, I won't have to do the two-factor again, not for 8 hours. After 8 hours, it expires and then you have to do it again. So that's the first step. Now, today, it looks like the majority of people have been fine and have got in, whoever's wanted to get in today, on either PTSD resolution or HGI. So Tony, what I'm saying here applies equally to PTSD resolution. There's been a small minority of people who have been kicked out. They got the two-factor email and they put the two-factor code, they put it in, and then they're told, you've made more than 3 attempts, or they're getting an error message or something like that. And what it seems to be is an issue with Google Chrome, and we're trying to figure out exactly what it is. So if you are trying to get in and you just can't get in, and I'm saying this now for the recording as well, because there may be people listening to this who are not you guys, who are not struggling with this. The first immediate way of solving the problem is to download Firefox, Mozilla Firefox. It's just another browser. And I know it might be slightly inconvenient, but all you need is to download Firefox and put in your same address, manyother.net/HGI, and Firefox just seems to be trouble-free until we can get to the bottom of Chrome. With most people with Chrome, there is a sophisticated way of clearing cache, which seems to solve the problem. But to be honest, I don't want to waste time describing how to do it. So what I would say is, if you want to try that with me, you can contact me. I can arrange a Zoom meeting with you. It's only a 5-minute thing to do, and it'll either work or it won't work. It seems to be working, when that does happen. So that's just the first log-on issue that I wanted to bring your attention to. Now, the next thing I want to bring your attention to, the very next thing you do when you log in for the first time, is go to your user profile. You get to that by clicking on your username here. And your password will have retained the same as what it was before. There's no issue with that. If for any reason you wanted to change it, you can simply click in the box, type it in, and then retype it in, and it'll save, etc. But your existing password will be fine. It is important that you have the current email address you're using. Now, some people might have been set up in Pragmatic Tracker 3 years ago, 4 years ago, and since then they've changed email address, and they haven't changed it. So I would like you to make sure your current email address that you use routinely is the one that you have in here in Pragmatic Tracker. Now, the next thing is the telephone. Now, we're moving on to offer, for many people, they won't choose to use this, and that's completely fine. But we're moving on to offer the ability to both eventually to receive your 6-digit two-factor authentication code by text message rather than email. And here you can choose the message preference, right? But wait until I send out a generic message to say that this is happening, because at the moment we've got it in a forced default position of email, because we want to make sure that the email is working. So in a few weeks' time, we'll probably change it so you can change your preference for what you want. So I will send an email out to say your now user preference is open for that function, and that's how you would choose it. But here's the important thing. All phone numbers that are entered into Pragmatic Tracker from now on must be in international format. And so this one is now incorrect. You can't leave it like this. It has to be +44, take out the 0. And it's all right to leave spaces, but actually the easiest thing is to have no spaces. So you could also have 0044 or +44 and then delete that first 0. The reason for this is because we're using a service called Twilio, which is international, and we've got Pragmatic Tracker. I'm glad to say we're only a mom and pop operation, but we're actually all the way from New Zealand to the west coast of America and various places in between. So we have to use an international system, and that's why you have to enter the phone number for yourself as a user and also for your clients with this international format. So that may already answer some of your questions. Some of you today might have found that you couldn't use the the telephone number. Now, with your existing clients, I'm sorry about this, but you will need to go in and change. If you've already captured a phone number in there for them, you'll need to change the format to be this +44 as well for them, if it's here. Right, so message preference for the moment, you can just sort of leave it at email, but in time, when I send out a notification, it'll probably come up as a message when you log in that you can now choose whether you want your two-factor to come like that or not. And then it's just good to, you know, keep your profile up to date. Now, the next thing is this. And there's a significant change from what you might have been used to. So up to now, in the previous iteration of Pragmatic Tracker, you had two places. If you did nothing, the standard message that went out with links to questionnaires is as what is written here. But, or in fact, they're blank, I think. When you log in, it's blank, and there's a default that comes out. But you can personalize it here. So this is personalizing your generic message that goes out to clients. And in my case, this is what I've put down. Before your next session, help me to understand how things are going for you at the moment. And the feedback is, please tell us what you thought about the last session by filling in the online form. Something along those lines. But there was also the option to edit it client by client. That is now gone because, well, it's gone. It's sort of gone, but it's come back in a better way, which you'll see. And I actually won't say any more about it at this point, so I don't confuse you too much, but you'll see what I mean in a sec. So that's your first job. You get through two-factor, you go to your user profile, you make sure your telephone number is in the international format, you make sure your email address is your current email that you want to know about. And this is also important. If for some reason you forget your password and you need to do a password reset, you need 2 of 3 pieces of information. 1 is your username, 2 is your email address, and 3 is your telephone number. So you only need, you know, it could be your username and your phone number, or your username and your email address. But if you had, for example, the wrong format of the phone number, then you won't be able to get in, and then you'll be contacting me. Mostly, actually, people, I get very little difficulty with people getting blocked out. So that's to do with user profile. I just wanted to labor that. Now, what we will do is, I mean, in the last session, I covered an awful lot about all the new bits and pieces. Again, if you didn't attend those last sessions, I will email out again. You should have had the email links. If you haven't had an email link, an email with the link to the recordings of those sessions, please message me, email me, and I'll send them to you again. But that will cover in really quite a lot of depth the new features that exist within this version 3. Right now, I want to keep to this very pedestrian stuff about making sure these first steps with the client go well. So I'm now going to add just a fictitious client, right? I'll make myself the client. So I'll call myself Bill Sample 1. That'll do. Referral date will default to today's date. Now, you might remember I covered this before. You can see this box, this clinical consent box is black, which means it must be ticked. You won't be able to save the client unless that is ticked. Ticking that box is verifying within Pragmatic Tracker that you have consent from your client to gather data about them electronically. This typically falls into your intake procedure, where maybe you're emailing a client, you know, in my case, new client contacts me. I have a sort of a standard email stuff that goes out to them, a couple of documents explaining about the way I work, rates, terms, conditions, etc. By the way, as part of the way I work, I use an electronic system called Pragmatic Tracker, capture your client record in there. And when they first come for their appointment, that's when I get them to sign a document to, you know, to say I've had all of that permission. Now, this is a bit of a chicken and egg thing. It's like you could say, well, can I not click that clinical box until I've seen the client the first time and got the document? My answer to that is it's called Pragmatic Tracker. You've got to be pragmatic. So what you do, you know, clients contacted you by phone, you get their, you maybe explain this on the phone to them. You say, you know, you will be getting an email from me with a link to some questionnaires, blah, blah, blah. And you obtain their consent like that. But I would always recommend when they first come to see you face to face, or you have a process, you know, where some document that they fax back to you, not fax, scan back to you or whatever, that they've given their definite consent for permission to be captured. Plus, and I mean, to be honest, this absolutely applies if you're simply keeping paper records as well. It's exactly the same thing. It's all part of GDPR. So we've inbuilt this into Pragmatic Tracker as a way really to be clear with you, belt and braces, you've done that. Now, the other new element of this, as part of my intake with my clients, I always point out to them that your anonymous data may be used for research purposes and service development, etc. That's just part of what I say, which means I would then automatically tick that box. So I would sort of be working on the assumption that most of you will be exactly the same as that. The reason this is in here is because we're working with BACP, and they wanted to be able to separate out the clients that are happy to have clinical data captured within an electronic system on the one hand, but don't want anything, even anonymously, to go forward for research purposes. But I would suggest to you, your default position should be that the data is available for research. I'm working on the assumption that right up to today's date, every client that's been entered is available for research purposes, and I have no reason to change that protocol. So my suggestion to you would be that in any new cases, you tick that box automatically. Right, phone number. So remember, this has got to be this international format. As soon as I type the phone number in there, I get the red box. Now, we'll have covered this. This is to send a verification text to make sure that Pragmatic Tracker has captured the right number. I've done that, and the text has been sent. You heard it ringing on my phone. I can now, as soon as I've sent it, this box appears here, and I can now tick that box. Unless that is done, then Pragmatic Tracker won't be able to communicate by SMS with the client. Exactly the same thing applies to the email. Tick, verification is sent. Ding, it's raining here now, but I just heard my email beep. Verification is done. Now, I spent quite a bit of time on this in the last video about explaining. In fact, there it is, just coming in on this computer now. You know, this is a process you might do even on the phone with a client, or you'll tell them again in your intake procedure. It's a belt and braces thing to be sure that Pragmatic Tracker has captured the correct email and the correct phone number for that client and all of that, right? Now, the bit that's going to answer some of the questions some of you have from today is, but Bill, I wasn't able to send out forms to the client. The reason is, this is new. This new line here, message preference. In the old system, it was system-wide. You could say to me, well, I want to automate the process of links going out to clients before appointments. Can you switch it on for me? I would switch it on for you, and then it's on for all of your clients. The change now is that it's client by client. You can say, right, with this client, actually, it's, you know, there might be a zillion reasons you might choose to say, well, I want to be in the room with the client when they fill out outcome measures. And I don't want to automate the process. But in my case, that rarely happens. I really like the automated process. But the reason some of you might have found today that you couldn't, you thought, well, I can't send out the questionnaires like I normally was able to do, was because you have to, with your existing clients, you've got to open up their client profile and you've got to choose email, right? If you're going to do it by email. SMS text, I will have described in the last video, there are some charges involved with that. Not our charges, the company charges is 3p per text. And that's a decision for you to have to make, whether you want these links to go by SMS or email. A lot of people are saying, you know, I'm happy enough with email, so I'll do it by email, and then I can choose auto. So the reason today, some of you will have found, was because this box simply wasn't ticked. That's all it was, right? Now, that's the first thing to explain. The second thing to explain is this. Actually, due to feedback from Malcolm and his colleague in Scotland about, would it be possible to be able to remind, they're dealing a lot with younger teenagers, and the suggestion was, could we remind these younger teenagers more than once that they had an appointment with us to try to cut down on fail to attend? So we talked about that afterwards. We'd already decided on it being once available, but we thought that was a very good idea. So we've now introduced that. Now, what this means is that when you create an appointment for a client, they will get 2 reminders about that appointment. They'll get one 3 days before by default, and they will get one 25 hours before. Now, you can then choose which of these appointments you'll send the link to the questionnaires with. And the obvious choice, the default position I would recommend you choose, would be the second reminder. In other words, you want the client to fill in questionnaires the day before they come to see you, not 3 days before they come to see you, because it's asking them about the last week. Well, if it's 3 days before, this half of that week is still available to be lived through, so you're not getting it as relevant to the time. So really, ideally, clients want to fill in these questionnaires as close to your appointment time as possible. So 25 hours before means the day before, basically. So my default position to set up for a client is email auto reminder 2 that I'm going to put in including the measures with, right? Now, I'm not going to bother filling in all this stuff. That's just standard. One thing some of you may or may not have been interested in before, it's been switched on for quite a long time in HGI site. You can upload documents here. This might be, for example, it could be anything. It could be some email communication between you and your client that you wanted to save as a PDF or something like that for reference. It might be your letter of referral from somebody or whatever like that. And you can attach documents in here once the client has been saved. You can see it says you can upload documents after saving the client. You can't do it yet because we haven't yet saved this client. I'm going to just pick something quick to use here, the ORS and PRNF5. These are the measures. You'll notice the first one I pick automatically defaults to the primary measure, but you can change that, whatever you want. You can make whatever you want as your primary measure. Personally, I always have the measure I use the most frequently with clients. So it might be Core 10 or ORS that I would typically use, you know. I'm just picking ORS here because it's quick to demonstrate. And goals, I did a lot about goals on the last video as well. So you can remind yourself about that back there. So I'm ready now to create this client. There's plenty of questions accumulating over there. I'll get to all those shortly. I'll just carry on to get to the end before I lose my train of thought here. So now the client profile is created. The client is created in the system, ready to add a new session. You can always go back and double check that anytime, make sure it's correct. And obviously these boxes, these tick boxes have got to be green in order for Pragmatic Tracker to communicate with the client, and you must have chosen a message preference. If you don't choose a message preference, you won't be able to send out the links, or they won't go automatically. Right, click to add new session. Now, the date and time defaults to today. So it's 16. Oh, that's interesting. It seems to be, I'm an hour out. So there must be a setting that needs changing. I'll have to make a note of that to myself. It should be defaulting to 1758, not 1658. So it will be once I get that adjusted. And then what happens is, so this client is going to come to see me next week, right? So we're going to say the 17th at 4 o'clock. Change that. 17th of June at 4 o'clock. Now, automatically, you can see what happens here. Reminder 1 changes to 3 days before that appointment, to the 14th of June at 4 o'clock. Reminder 2 changes to the 16th of June, the day before, at 3 o'clock, which is 25 hours before the appointment. And the default position is here that the measures will be included with the second reminder. All good there. You can override this. Supposing you say, Bill, you know what, I don't want to be hassling my clients, I only want to send them one reminder. All you do, it will be there by default, you simply delete it. That's the end of it. You'll now only be sending the second reminder, right? And just leave the second one in place. And that is that. Now, oh, so you have to choose the type of session. Create. Okay, now this client, in the client profile, I chose for this client to get their message by auto. So what should happen for this client is they'll get their reminder 25 hours before with the link to the questionnaires to be filled in. And the blurb, the text inside that will be standard as defined by the system. Now, I just want to go into this session here now to show you, though, how A, it can be overridden, or B, if you say, actually, I don't want to automate the process for the client, I'm going to decide myself when I want to send the link out. For whatever reason you might want to do that, that's fine. And this is how you do it. So this is exactly the same now, whether you choose auto or whether you and you want to override, or you don't choose auto at all, right? So let's assume I didn't choose auto. We go here now. Now, in the past, at this point, you would have been able to edit some of the wording in the message that went out to the client. We've now taken that away to simplify the process, because the reason is, and you may have found this, in maybe 5%, maybe higher sometimes, but we think around 5% of clients, for whatever reason, email addresses like Hotmail, Outlook, these seem to be problematic emails where the message doesn't even show up in junk or spam. Sometimes it doesn't even come through. Now, if you find a client where that just simply is the case, you still have the opportunity to send an email link to the client, but you do it this way. You can see here, if you would prefer to send a personal email, please copy and paste this link to their measures and click cancel below. So you'd literally take that there and copy it and just paste it into a direct email from you, because that will definitely get through. So this is to deal with these minority of cases. I was really pleased actually to find out in questioning people about this that actually this rarely has occurred. Some people have never had a problem with this, which I'm delighted, but others have had. So this gives you the opportunity, if you say, well, you know, I want to write my own epistle to the client about whatever I have to say about them, you can send them the link to the questionnaire this way, right? So you can no longer make the edit inside this bit. If you want to edit the generic words that go out to your client, you need to do it back in your user profile where I showed you at the very beginning. Now, here's the other thing. I need some water. I have therapists who love, like me, the automated process because it takes it all out of the room. It's all done before the client walks in the door to me. I have no problems whatsoever in asking the client to fill in a PRN 14, a Core 10, and an ORS before they see me that first time. They're doing it in their own time at home. Before they walk in the door to me, I have all that information available. I love that. I have other therapists who say, Bill, I don't want to do that. Particularly the first time I see a client, I actually would prefer the client to be in the room with me filling in the questionnaire. I have absolute respect for that. That's completely fine. In fact, some of the therapists working with PTSD resolution cases particularly say that because they, they haven't met the client before, and sometimes these clients are very, very, very disturbed, upset, and can be triggered easily even by things in the questionnaire. So the therapist wants to be there with them when they fill it in, right? So what we try to do with Pragmatic Tracker, to be pragmatic, is to offer you every opportunity to do it any way you like. And so you can send a reminder about the appointment, but not include measures. So it simply says, remember, you've got an appointment on Friday at 4 o'clock, Friday the 17th at 4 o'clock, period. That's the end of the message. Or it says, remember, you have an appointment on Friday at 4 o'clock. Please click on this link to fill in the questionnaires. So you've got to cover that way. And the final way there is, if you want to send a personal email to the client, you can take the link from there and send it in. So I hope that covers that. So if I was doing this manually and I want the link to go out with the reminder, I would tick that box. If I want to send a reminder, but I don't want the link to go out, I don't have that box ticked. And if I want to personalize a message directly from my own email, I send it, I copy that and paste it into the email. And that I think is that. The same things apply again with the feedback. It'll go out automatically. It goes out 6 hours after an appointment is finished. And so obviously date and time of appointments are important things to have in. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to stop sharing and get over and have a look at all these questions here. Right. From Sue. Does two-factor authentication need to be text? Can it be email? I've just answered that. Good. So yes, one or the other. At the moment, it's going to default to email. In a couple of weeks' time, you'll probably get all the generic email to say you can change your user profile settings and choose. From Sue, what is auto mean in a message preference? Have I covered it, Sue?
Yeah.
Yeah, got it. Okay.
Malcolm also helped me. Thank you.
Malcolm helped you as well. Oh, thank you, Malcolm. Looking after me here. Will SMS validation text be chargeable when that becomes available? Yes. Now, this is a sort of an honesty box system. I explained this quite a lot in my last communications about this. The thing is, if you capture a client's mobile phone number, remembering the international +44 thing, that will definitely go out to a client every single time. They'll definitely get the link, and the links will be there. It'll remind them about the appointment and or have the link in it. But it costs 3 pence. It's not our charge. It's the Twilio charge, which we have to pay. But unfortunately, we can't, as yet anyway, devise a sophisticated enough system so that each one of you as individual users can generate your own Twilio account. So for example, and Tony, I'm delighted you're actually here because I have to have this discussion with you about PTSD resolution. The big advantage in getting reminders to clients is that you're hopefully going to cut down on DNA. So, if you remind somebody 3 days before and 1 day before, or if you choose to make that 5 days before, you can change it whatever you want. Hopefully, an investment of 3p will impact on whether a £50 or £90 or whatever the cost of a session isn't lost. So in that sense, it's a very good return on investment. But if you send 2 reminders, if you send by SMS, if you send a reminder about the appointment, then you send a reminder with a link, and then you send a link to feedback by SMS, that's 9p per session, per client, right? And obviously, even that doesn't sound like very much, but when you do the maths, if you're busy and you see quite a lot of cases, you know, it might add up to £30 a year or £40 a year. And that's a choice that what we're saying to you guys is, and I've already asked all of you who were on the previous things, and many of you have come back to me to say, I'm happy with the idea of 9p. I prefer to be 100% sure that those messages go through. Others are saying, actually, I've never had a problem with email, so I'm happy to stick with email. But what we have to do is, in the case of HGI practitioners, because they're all individual, is we have to have a sort of an honesty box system where we're going to ask you, if you want that feature on, that you just go for a month, you get a rough calculation of how many texts you're using, and basically we'll ask you to pay us some money twice a year, you know, £15 twice a year or whatever it is, you know, and so that's a personal choice for you to make. In the case of PTSD resolution, though, it's an organization. And so it's a discussion that we'll have at another point, Tony, but it's something you can sleep on tonight, whether you would say, actually, as an organization, we'll switch this on across the board. Now, what would happen then is, organizationally, you will have your own Twilio account. It's like a credit thing where you pay in £20 here and there. It gets topped up as it runs down. When it runs out, you top it up on an automatic thing. Because particularly with the nature of the PTSD resolution clients, it may be very, very advantageous to remind them about their appointments to save on waste, basically, you know? So that's the point about that. From Martha.
Bill, can I just say about that one? I was particularly thinking about when we log in and we have to go for the two-part validation. When you switch on in a few weeks' time, will that one be chargeable as well?
Well, it is chargeable in the sense we'll be charged for it. Like, okay. So what I would ask you to do is, if you choose that, take a wild guess. I mean, remember, it's only once a day.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
So yeah. I would ask you again, it's an honesty box situation. We're not wanting to make any money out of this. We just want to offer the feature, and what we'll have to do in the case of HGI is we'll have to be the Twilio account holders for HGI, and basically there's just we can't afford to carry the cost of all those SMSs, you know. But that's a great point. Thank you, Amanda.
Thank you.
No, but I think, Bill, at the end of the day, the two-factor authentication gives us an added element of security, so we should be willing to fund it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's pretty easy. You know, it's
pretty easy. No, it is.
You know how many clients you're seeing. You know how many times you're getting one. So
yeah, exactly. Thanks, Kath. Yeah, the point is the two-factor works, as you could see with myself there, works perfectly well by email as well. So if it's working by email and the fact that they're coming in, fine. If you're finding for some reason they're not coming in by email, I have a range of different email addresses, and with one email address, the two-factor there's a delay on it, which is a complete pain, because you know, you go in the morning, you can go in and make a cup of tea waiting for the email to come in. That's a pain. You want it there and then, you know. Yeah. So if I was stuck with using that email address, I think I would choose to have it by SMS. But if you know your email address and you got a smartphone and you got it, it works fine then.
Well, I went in today, Bill, and I got the email straight back as soon as I went in.
Perfect. So then you can
say, you know, I am an IT Luddite, so I might prefer, once I've gone into the site, to have it on my phone and pay you for that privilege. If you see what I mean.
You can make that choice, you know. You can make that choice. Absolutely. Auto runs a countdown without you having to send manually. No, it doesn't, Malcolm. Oh no, sorry. You're referring to the countdown for the client. Yeah, exactly. So, sorry, I thought you were talking about the countdown of the number of SMSs. No, that's absolutely right. So the auto figures out, it's called a cron job. It's every 5 minutes, Pragmatic Tracker checks through to see who's due to have a reminder sent out, and then it automatically sends them out. Thanks, Malcolm. That's great. And sends out best in the run-up 1 week for, right. It sends them up. Our default is 3 days before and 1 day before. You can change that if you prefer to make it 10 days before and 2 days before. You do whatever you want. I would recommend sticking with the 1 day before if you're sending the link out, though, because for all those reasons about you're filling out a questionnaire about including today. Right, they're all the questions. Okay, I've got through all the main things. Tony, if you have a question, just unmute yourself if you're muted. Where are you? Oh, I'll unmute you.
There we go.
Oh yeah, there you go.
I've forgotten the question now. When does is this all live now or?
Absolutely, yeah, went live this afternoon.
Okay, how exciting. Are Claire and Carolina fully briefed up on this?
Oh yes, they are, yeah. I had an hour and a half session with Carolina a few weeks ago about this, showing her all the elements about it.
Good.
And I'm in touch with almost the entire PTSD resolution team today.
Oh,
an hour
good.
and a half with Susan Hancock and
I will test them tomorrow. Good.
Great, yeah. So, but the one thing you need to mull over is this business of the SMS side of things. You know, we can have a separate discussion.
And just a quick third question. How do not a PTSD question, but an HGI question, really? How do people charge? How do people pay you for any costs, like SMS or whatever?
Nobody's done so yet.
What's the mechanism?
Well, the mechanism will be simply backs transfer or something, you know. You know, I'm going to a lot of length to explain to people this is going to be an honesty box thing. Those people who choose to use SMS have got to figure out, right, am I sending 2 reminders and a feedback text to a client? That's 9p per client. In the last month, I saw X number of clients. That should be roughly that much.
But given all this unbelievably clever technology that you've been grappling with, there isn't a sort of counter that can be used to count up every single SMS?
Well, the answer to that is yes and no. And that was my point. In the case of PTSD resolution, what happens there is you would open your own Twilio account for your SMS, and that will have the counter, which you would automatically pay as an organization for all of your different users, right? All of your 120 practitioners.
Okay.
But we can't, as of yet, install it. It would be more development, and to be honest, the cost for us to build into the user profile what would be necessary, it'll take us, it'll take us far too long in time to recover it. So,
well, we're all very honest people, aren't we?
Well, I think the thing is, there's a lot of goodwill around all of this, and
sure.
I think people know that we work hard to try to keep this available at a rock bottom price. For example, last year, the whole system we did of the donations to PTSD resolution, so the money got doubled and all that, it worked extremely well. Yeah. So we'll be doing the same thing again this year. We're going to ask at the end, whenever it is, beginning of December, £40 per person, a little bit higher than last year, just to help with covering other overhead costs.
Great. Okay.
But in addition to that, we will also ask people who use SMS to pay for that. We're not going to badger them every week or every month. Once a year even will be fine, We'll just rely on people to make an assessment of it.
Yeah, okay, thanks. No more questions.
I think, Bill, your idea last year to generate some income in asking for money to be given to PTSD and the response that got, I think that was a really efficient way of covering costs.
Absolutely. It just, it meant, if somebody donates 40, it turns to 80, and it just really, really helps.
Not to like, yeah.
Exactly. It helps both the PTSD resolution license and the HGI license, which I have to say I'm greatly indebted to Tony Gavain for continuing to support it, because sadly for me personally, very sadly for me, the HGI board didn't take that view. I completely understand it, because particularly last year there were all sorts of other pressures and costs and all the rest of it, you know, and that's fine. But we were rescued, really, or well, you guys were rescued to keep Pragmatic Tracker available by PTSD resolution.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, what I'm looking forward to is more quantification of the wonderfulness of HGI through the accumulation of all these results. This is the whole point of the damn thing, is to quantify
that's another discussion.
evidence.
That's another discussion that I
Well,
need to have.
I think Tony's made a really good point there, because I have never had a single client who, when I've explained to them why we are collecting the anonymized data and it's about efficiency and how it helps people, I've never had a single one who says, no, I don't want my data used.
No, absolutely. Sue, you're going to jump in there. I'm very
Yeah, I mean, I think the issue, we've started talking about this in the peer group
Yeah.
in Suffolk and Essex and Norfolk,
Oh, yeah, great.
Anglia, about how we can get together between us some money to actually use this data, so that there can be something that we can all use as information. I haven't really got very far, apart from
I mean, you know,
ideas.
Yeah, well, I mean, the thing is that, you know, as I tried to explain in my communications to the board last year, there seemed to be like the idea that all this stuff happens by magic. I don't know, like Bill in the middle of the night writing papers about everything. That isn't happening, you know. I mean, the data comes in. People have got to run projects. You know, Pragmatic Tracker is a tool, a very good tool that allows all this to happen. But somebody has to have the idea. You know, somebody has to say, right, we want to do a research project on such and such. A few years ago, PTSD Resolution paid a lot of money, to be honest, to King's in London to write a detailed, extensive report about PTSD resolution work. But that turned into a published paper, which is available.
Yeah.
But
I think we need to find a funder. I mean, it's not COVID at the moment has shut down most funds.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But once that's opened again.
Yeah, but I mean, it goes beyond this for me. I mean, I have all sorts of ideas I've always had about this sort of stuff, and I've written about it for years. But you know, for example, a peer group in an area can say, right, we will design our own small project, and we will measure, let's say, the next 100 clients with measure X, measure Y, and measure Z, with the purpose of demonstrating whatever. And you design a project, and you go about it as though, if you like, you were doing a research project at university for a PhD or for a master's, and you work at it and you pull it together, really tightly controlled, and you get it published. You know, that's what needs to be happening. But that's grassroots stuff.
But less ambitious. Could we not? I mean, I can find a researcher. They ring me up every day of the bloody week asking for bloody work to do. I can find a tuppenny halfpenny researcher to, you know, to cut their teeth on. Answering some bog standard questions.
Absolutely.
Not clever questions about bloody comparing it with IAPT and all this rubbish, but bog standard questions. I can't quite think of any at the moment. You know, how many clients you had in the last 10 years? What are their outcomes? Above 50%, blah blah, or whatever.
That's right. So there's that.
Core 10. I mean, if Core 10 is the one that most people are using.
Yeah.
It's a validated measure.
Sure, we could come up with some bog standard questions.
It would be very easy to cross-check what we're all achieving against the national data.
Yes.
But
I mean, things I've been speaking about for years is that a really good project, for example, for a small group of people to do would be to say, right, we're going to measure all of our clients with Core 10, but also with GAD7 and PHQ9. It doesn't have to be every client forevermore. Could say, for the next 6 months, let's capture data on 100 cases with Core 10, GAD7, and PHQ9. The reason being that if you can then demonstrate that change on Core 10 equates to change on GAD7 and PHQ9, you have a massive retrospective validation of all of the data for the last 10 years, because GAD7 and PHQ9 are the industry standards in IAP services.
Okay.
So, you know, these are the sort of thing, and I'm real happy to have discussions with anyone about any of this, but this does not happen. There are not wheels turning up here in Sheffield in the middle of the night. It is down to really
and neither are there at HG, because for the same reason there isn't time resources on it. So I think it's
exactly. Sometimes though it's more about human resource. It's about ideas, and it's about a group, half a dozen people getting together and saying, right, we're going to make something happen. Jenny Wakelin in the Netherlands made this happen. She did this over a 6-month period with 3 or 4 therapists gathering data about their outcomes with trauma cases as a discrete little project. My point is that Pragmatic Tracker is the architecture, it's the structure that allows all of this to happen very, very easily. But people have, the responsibility really lies with the people. Another example of this, we work with another organization called Quest Cognitive Hypnotherapy. Now they just, the other day, in fact, asked me, well, 2 weeks ago, asked me for an extraction of all of their data for the last 5 years. And they've got somebody in the middle of PhD who's interested in working on their data, to pull out, like Tony's saying, to pull out the stories out of it. Who got their hand up there?
Jane.
Hi.
If, because I'm part of the Suffolk peer group with Sue, Bill, if we were going to do a study like this, would you suggest that we choose a particular client or keep it broad, or just choose our sort of trauma clients or our...
I think what you have to get clear about is what it is you're trying to demonstrate, in the first instance. In other words, what's your research question? What is it, and then you would define your criteria from that,
Okay.
So it's setting about it like that. And I am no expert in this field at all. I mean, I know plenty about outcome measures and all the rest of it, but I'm no expert. I'm not a researcher,
No.
I mean, I've managed to get these papers published for HGI, but it wasn't without, pulling in lots of favors from people around the globe to help me with it, But there are people there to do that. And remember, locally as universities, there's always people out there trying to be honest, looking for people like us with rich sources of data, but it's doing the donkey work to make all that happen,
I suppose, Bill, the real thing is irrelevant of the question you ask in terms of, does this work with trauma patients? Is the HGI approach efficient? I suppose the thing that what you have to, if a group of practitioners chose to take this on, and how you could attract someone to then analyze the outcome, is there has to be an agreement on the measures that are used.
Oh yes, absolutely.
To develop, and that would be the key thing to me, that everyone agrees to use the same measures to establish outcomes, because that gives them the researcher the base.
Absolutely, and I go back to the very first paper, the Luton paper, exactly that, very tightly controlled. Now, a small group of clients, actually, 124 clients, 3 therapists over a 12-month period, but signed up that every single client gets measured at every single session with these measures. This measure at start, etc., etc. You have to have consistency. So I know you've got a question down here or a comment down here. I'll come to you in a second. I don't know who everybody is. Look, I can't remember all your names looking at the pictures. But my point about this is Pragmatic Tracker works at multiple levels. In the first instance, what is in its heart, what it's about is your communication with your client. It's a conversation enhancement tool to allow you to really engage with your client, to understand their worldview, what's going on for them, and using all the features of it then to maybe track the goals that they want to set, the progress that they're making, and all the rest of it. So if you never went beyond that, to me, it's a massive benefit in terms of the work that you do day to day with your clients. Number 2, it's a massive benefit to yourself in a sort of self-reflective, self-supervisory process where you can keep, those days when the client comes in and you think, oh, mother of God, I have no idea what I'm doing. And you just feel all despondent and miserable, and the client's outcome measures have gone through the floor. And then you go back and you think, oh, hang on a minute, look at the last 25 people I saw. They all made good progress. And, you become reflective of your work like that. That's that level. So that's at the so it's the client level, the practitioner level. Then there's the sort of peer level, supervision, working with your supervisor, talking about your clients in supervision. And then beyond that, you come up to the organizational level when you start thinking about research projects and all the rest of it. So it's a multi-layered thing. Now, who's down here in my bottom left corner with white and black top on? Who is it? Oh, Beth. It's Beth, sorry. When I move the thing, I can see your name. Do you want to I'll just unmute you. Beth,
Right,
sorry.
about Bill, you're talking about doing research, but surely you would need, if you're going to measure standards of therapist work, surely you would need each therapist to be working in the same way. Now,
Yeah,
we're all HGI trained, but I am not an HGI therapist because I find that HGI just isn't enough, especially for the PTSD chaps.
Yeah, that's a very valid point, and it reflects really back onto what Kath was on about. But you see, this has moved on such a lot from years back. Now, really, for me, Pragmatic Tracker is a tool that's very much involved with the way you work and helping with the way you work and all the rest of it. If there's a choice made for practitioners who want to do some sort of a research project on something or other, they have to decide on what that protocol is. They've got to decide on how tight they're going to fit within some particular structure. That's a different issue, really. And that's up to people to figure that out, you know. But Pragmatic Tracker, from my side, is a tool that's available. It's improved year on year on year. It's reliable, dependable, it's secure. It's a great place to keep all your notes. It's making the whole process much, much easier. And in my heart, you know, I just think
I know
that's what it's about.
Fabulous. Yes. Can I ask one more question, please?
Sure.
I am just in awe of your work, Bill. There's absolutely no doubt about that. Right. I don't think I've been using Pragmatic Tracker properly because I find that several of my clients and PTSD guys, they might get the forms. Are you hearing me? Yes.
I'm hearing you
there?
now.
Yeah. Okay. Right. I'm finding that several of the guys I'm seeing are not getting the forms. Okay. Now, am I using? What do I need to do? What am I missing?
Well, I think the thing is, I will be sending, along with the links to the previous recordings, I will send a link to this recording, right? And I would go back and listen to that first 20 minutes again to get absolutely clear on the process.
So what you are saying then is that I need to fill in the client profile when I start with a new client.
Well, it will already be filled in to some degree by PTSD resolution for you.
Right.
But you will need to make sure that those bits I described are correctly chosen.
Okay, because I've never done that before.
To use those features, yeah. Now, by the way, I forgot to say this earlier. I recommend, very strongly recommend to everybody to set up one test client. Make it yourself, make it your own email address, your own phone number, and just keep it there as a play client, right? You can call it Kat's test client, right? Or Beth's test client, whatever you want, right? And, you know, in the fullness of time, if that data were ever going to be used for anything, that client would just be taken out of it, you know? Just call it test whatever, you know? And use it to test features of Pragmatic Tracker so you understand how it works, what comes to the actual client. So you get very, very familiar with it. That's really, really important thing to do. Because you'll forget, you know, I'll tell you stuff, you'll forget it, go back and practice again, you know?
Yeah. No. Can I ask another question, please?
Oh, you devil, go on.
I'm so
get in
sorry.
One more while we're still on you.
This might be for Tony, I'm not sure. I have difficulty with, have I finished with the client? Have I completed, or am I going to do follow-up, or what? And it all comes from the AID clients, Tony. So when I finish 6 sessions with the client, have I completed? Because I've still got 2 more with their partner. So is that a follow-up? How do you, what's, where, what do I put?
I'll unmute. Oh no, I'm unmuted already. I'm scratching my head.
Okay, would you mind, guys? Do you mind if I interrupt you on that and ask you to take that sort of into a discussion, maybe a separate discussion?
Yes,
would you mind, Beth?
sure. Not
Simply
at all.
because I don't want to go down into a long tunnel here that we'll be in until 8 o'clock tonight. You know,
Right.
that's a protocol issue to be discussed directly with PTSD resolution. I think.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, have I got somebody else who's waiting to? No?
Bill, it's Kath here.
Kath.
Can I just say that I did exactly what you have just suggested? Well, you know, I am a famous IT Luddite, but I created a client and I went through the new system, you know, testing out, sending myself an email message, and I agree with you, it was very good for helping me work out how to navigate through the system.
Exactly.
Yeah. Then so I think that's a really good idea.
Great, thanks, Kath. Yeah. Roberta, I just unmute you 1 sec. Oh, you've done it, right?
Okay. At the moment, I've got it set up automatically so that the clients get their forms by email and their reminders by text. I'm guessing it's going to be either or now, from what you've said.
You get the reminders by text. Yes, it is. Yes, it's one or the other. Yeah, or both. Or both.
You can do both.
You can do both. Yeah, in the message preference, you can choose email and text.
Okay.
Right, but what you can't do is like send reminder 1 by text and then reminder 2 by email. You know,
okay.
You're either all or one or the other system. You know.
Okay.
I mean, we can drive ourselves crazy with trying to come up with every permutation and combination, but to try to keep it rational and reasonable, that's the way we've done it, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So again, I would suggest to play around with this, you know, creating a test line for yourself, see what you feel is going to be the system you're happy with. Roberta, you got into Spot a Bother today, didn't you?
Yes, I couldn't get in. I went in, I got the authentication code, put the code in, and then nothing happened.
Right.
And I was using Chrome.
You were using Chrome, so you were one of the people, right? So if you're still in trouble tomorrow, I mean, well, let me just say to you, it might be worth making a little Zoom appointment with me, and we'll try this Chrome clearance thing to see if we can solve it that way. If that fails, until we've figured out the answer to it, I'd have to suggest to you, I know if you use Firefox, it'll definitely work.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay, thanks.
So sorry you got into bother today.
Never mind. I'll email you about an appointment, and thanks.
Sue.
Hi, Bill. I'm sorry if this is very basic, but there was a time when you used to say don't put any patient identifiable information in, and now you're telling us to fill out a whole form with emails and telephone
numbers. Absolutely. How the world has changed.
How can I reassure my clients of the confidentiality?
Because we're as secure as Santander Bank. The thing is that in the old days, when we were starting out, we were with, I mean, everything has moved on so much in the last few years, in the last decade, really. I mean, when I think 2011, we went live. What are they called? The server hosting provider we were using back then, we weren't totally confident in the security of that system. And our attitude back then was, look, the best way to protect everything is don't capture anything that could reveal somebody's identity, right? But everything's moved on. We've moved to a state-of-the-art server hosting company in Manchester, ISO 27K registered and all the rest of it. And you know, you're seeing the upfront changes in the product and the new features, but under the bonnet, you know, the engine is several grades higher than where it was back then. So we are very, very confident in the security of the system. You know, we've done massive penetration testing. We've done all the sort of IT awful stuff that nobody wants to even think about in the background, to make sure it's safe. And of course, two-factor authentication is part of that process as well, you know. So you can happily reassure your clients that you're to an industry standard. Now, having said all of that, you know, hand on my heart, nobody, and you know, almost every week you hear about data security breaches. There was a major one in the NHS last year. You hear ones, there have been building societies affected. More recently, the hotel chain, the Hilton hotels, they had a massive security breach. If some hackers somewhere out in Eastern Europe or somewhere decide that they want to bust into a system, they will get in. You know, that's the fact. That
Bill, can I suggest that what they do is they go where the money is? I don't see there's a lot of money with us.
Exactly. I don't think anyone's going to be making a fortune out of bursting into Pragmatic Tracker, you know? So I think we're pretty low down the risk level, in spite of the fact that we hold a lot of confidential data. So great.
But I think it might be helpful for Sue and anybody else, for that matter, to have some useful phrase up their sleeve, like we adopt two-step identification just like the major banks do, or something.
Exactly.
You know, I mean,
exactly. Great point.
And if they do it, well, surely, you know.
Yeah, that's absolutely right.
Something like that.
Yeah, great question. And by the way, no question is too basic. Please, you know, never feel, oh my God, I'll sound like a right stupid idiot. I can guarantee you, any question you have, somebody else will have it as well. You know, so always please feel free to ask anything. So, have I exhausted the? Oh, people need to leave. Yeah, people have gone. Right. Is there anything else over here? Ben. Yeah, I don't mind carrying on. Please feel free to leave whenever you want. I'd like to just stay on to exhaust everything that I possibly can. But you know, I know it's getting to like gin and tonic time, isn't it? So Ben.
Just a very quick one on the actual client record on the top, where we're using the codes and not using any recognisable names. When you get a long list of clients there, that can be, you know, you've got to work your way through it. Is it okay now to use names on there?
Absolutely, yeah. So the Pragmatic Tracker will still default to offer you a client ID, but to be honest with you, you're putting in a client's email address, a client's phone number. You might as well put their name in, you know, because the chances are their email address is going to be more or less their name anyway. So if you want to do that, that's completely fine. Yeah.
Thank you.
Great. Is there anything I've missed over on my chat? Malcolm, have you been keeping? Oh, he's gone, is he? Oh no, he's there. Have I missed anything? No, Malcolm, let me unmute.
Malcolm left, Bill. Malcolm left.
No, he's not. He's there.
I was just trying to answer Sue's question about where to find the King's article, and I said PTSDR website. So I was just looking for the specific address to cut and paste.
Oh yeah.
It is
No,
on the website.
it's fine, Malcolm. I know PTSD resolution.
It's on there. Yeah.
It was that.
It's a download on it.
Yeah. Thank you.
How can we ensure clients confidentiality? Yeah, we covered that. Apologies, I have to leave immediately. All right. Do you think we've got there, guys?
Yeah, it's lovely.
Yeah, brilliant.
Great. So, my gosh, 70 minutes. So, those who didn't attend tonight, they can wade their way through. But actually, to be honest with you, I think a lot of really interesting things have come up, including about research and stuff like that. So, I hope you found it useful.
Very much.
No, this is teething time with this major step up. There will be wrinkles here and there. There are probably things that we have yet to find out about, which you guys are probably going to find out about. So please, all your feedback is very, very welcome. I would really encourage you to, if you didn't listen to the recording before the last time, to listen particularly to the bit about the goal-based outcomes. I'm actually more excited about that than anything else, and I would love to see a research project based around that. So that's for another discussion. But my intention is to do these, you know, maybe aim to do these once a month, once every 6 weeks, just to keep the energy going, keep people talking about it. Hope you find it useful and enjoyable and entertaining. I love hearing about, you know, how you're getting on with it and what you like, what you don't like. We're always, you know, I mean, we take everyone's feedback very, very seriously. And sometimes, pretty much all of the new features that have come out in version 3 came from you, different members of the people out there saying, you know, wouldn't it be good if? And so that's great. So thank you so much for taking this chunk of time.
Thank you, Bill, for all your energy and enthusiasm.
Not at all. It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. Lovely to see you all. Okay. All the best, guys. Bye-bye. Bye.